Hi, I'm Tony Ryan, neuroathletic coach, and I'm here to help you get out of pain and perform at your best. If you find this video helpful, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you don't find it helpful, hit the dislike button, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other stuff on YouTube you can find that'll probably help you out. Hello everyone, today we're going to be going over different ways to strengthen your shoulder that you haven't really thought of before. The main thing today that I want to go over is the fact that in most gym exercises, everything is one, it's linear, and then two, it's only loaded in one direction, which is typically up. So given that our shoulder particularly has so many ranges of motion that we can go anywhere in here, I think it's very important that we make it strong in all those ranges of motion, or else we're susceptible to injury, and or our brain might not feel safe, so it may just give us pain or it may give us tension or restriction because we're not strong in a bunch of different ways. And that lack of capability really creates a lot of threat for our brain, and it'll cause us to protect. So in the essence of not wanting our brain to have to overprotect us, we're just gonna go get strong in a bunch of different ranges of motion, and I'll show you how to do that right now. Good, so the idea with some of the work we're doing here, and I mentioned this in our last video where we went over some brain muscle connection for a lat and getting stronger at pull-ups, is we wanna build a better map in our brain for how to move these different areas. So particularly for our shoulder, you can think about this map here that your brain has laid out for all your body parts and go, hey, if my shoulder has all these different ranges of motion, all these different areas that I can actually move into, would it be intelligent to train in all those different areas, train in all those ranges of motion so that my brain has a better idea of where I am in space, and it'll feel safer and it'll feel more free to give me strength there. Because typically most of these outputs, most of this strength that I have is just my brain deciding whether or not it feels safe enough to give me the power. So when we're talking about building maps here, the idea of all of this is that we're building a better map for our brain, and you'll also feel quite a bit of work in some of these different ranges of motion as well, so don't worry about that. If you're really into feeling like I'm getting stronger and it's just really tough, you can make this as tough as you need to make it to get that feeling that you appreciate. Something you may want to do before and after this drill is you may want to assess and reassess. So you may want to assess your shoulder range of motion. You may want to assess any other pain that you have. You may want to check in on any other issues, movement issues that you care about. So if you're trying to get more depth in a squat, or if you're trying to get a better forward bend and loosen up your hamstrings and your lower back, those are all things that you can test before we do a drill and then reassess them after we do a drill and see if it made any improvements for you. This will give you a good indicator of how your system is responding to the stimulus and how your brain feels about it. So what we want to start with is just some basic things. You'll think about a bunch of different positions where we can do shoulder work in, or different places that our shoulder can go to that we could train in. First off, being right in front of us, we could start with just circles right here. And the reason I'm doing this right now is because I want you guys to be able to actually differentiate between what's called your GH joint, your glenohumeral joint, and your shoulder blade. So you can see a picture of it. I'll throw it up right there so you can understand. I want that arm bone, the humerus, to be moving, but I want my shoulder blade to stay still. So I'm not going like this. I'm actually keeping my shoulder blade still, and I'm just moving my arm in that glenohumeral joint right there, okay? So with those circles, you can do 5 or 10 in each direction, not that big a deal. They should be fairly simple, but I want you to understand the motor control aspect and differentiating for our brain between that arm bone and the shoulder blade. Then we can do things like come across, we can go all the way across, we can do work over here, we can come all the way out here. And even if I'm at that angle like this, I can even go further back from there as well, right? So I can be right here and go as far back as I can and start to do some circles back there and really just feel how my muscles and my brain are responding to that. This is a different sensation than what you're probably used to, right? Same goes for overhead. Same goes for all the way behind us and extension as well, right? So you can literally pick any direction and just start training there, right? And we're using circles right now just because they're slightly more complex than linear movement that most of us are used to in most of our training. But then you could start to go up in complexity as well by doing things like figure eights. You could draw letters of the alphabet like an A, a B, a C. You can do very many different variations of this. So I'm just telling you that so you can go and explore on your own. I'm not going to go through all of that in the video right now. Okay, the main point of me going over all of that and the different motions that you can make and the different positions is to go, there's a lot of complexity that you're probably not already training. And when you have all these other options to be able to train, you have a lot of ability to get a lot more strength out of your shoulder. So now we're going to be getting into some banded work. We're going to use some load now to actually load these different positions. There's a bunch of different ways to load them. For the sake of not having to go through every single position and load it in every direction, I feel like you guys are intelligent enough that you can apply this concept on your own. I'm going to go through one position on its own and just let you understand how we can load this in different ways to be able to get the most out of just the joint and actually be able to strengthen it in all different directions. So let's say I'm going to do this back version right here. Okay, so I'm going to go back over there. I'm actually going to take this band around my squat rack here. You can use a door frame or whatever. Make sure you're safe with your band work so you don't actually snap a band and end up on the internet in a funny video where you hurt yourself. I'll actually take this and I'll load this so that I'm loading it at a bit of a rotational angle, so I could have it pulling straight back, but this is like the center of a circle, and this is like my radius of the circle. I'm having this pull me like along the line of that circle because it's this rotational dynamic that my shoulder has. So I'm actually having it pull me back at this angle here, so it's actually pulling me into this end range, and now I could do my circular work over here. And this is way harder than what I was doing before. And you can actually just take your time, feel through moving the joint well, and appreciate the intensity and the tension that's happening right there, right? So I have it loaded backwards in this position, right? Then I could take it and I could actually load it so it's pulling me forwards, right? So exact same position, but it's pulling me forward, and now I have to do my work here. Good. So if you're familiar with the terms concentric and eccentric, there's essentially a concentric contraction there and an eccentric contraction there. And we're actually working both ends of that spectrum. But those are still fairly linear in terms of load. So I can do some other things, like load it from the top, right? So now I can use my squat rack to actually load me in a vertical direction, right? So I can be the same end range of motion here. My arm is all the way back as far as I can go, right? But now this band actually wants to pull me up, right? So now as I'm doing my circles, I'm getting loaded in a different direction, and it's just a different contraction. It's a different feel for all of my muscles, and it's a very different stimulus for my brain. And then I could use something like a kettlebell. I could use my foot. I could use whatever I want here. I could come up and do the same thing. Holy smokes. That is not the band that we want to use. It's a little bit too much load. That's just something you guys should think through, right? Like, just do as much load as you need. The dosage is important. Sometimes there's too much, sometimes it's too little. Find the right amount for you and what you can handle. So like, this is perfect for me, this gray band. I'm gonna come all the way out, same position. I'm gonna do my circles here. And it's just a much, much different contraction than what I was dealing with before. My brain's getting a bunch of different signals about where I am in space and how my shoulder needs to move. Good. And again, so I've done 4 directions. So I did loaded towards the front, loaded towards the back, loaded up, loaded down. You could do all the diagonals as well. So you could do up into the front, down into the front, down into the back, and up into the back, right? You guys can find ways to do that on your own. You don't need to sit on a video and do it with me necessarily, but you guys get the idea. So I could do that in this position like I just did, but then I could do it in the front, I could do it overhead, I could do it across my body, I could do it in extension all the way back here, right? So you have tons of options now that are very, very different from your normal kettlebell press or lateral raise. And now we have a bunch of different ways to load it, a bunch of different ways to move through that. And now we'll give our brain a better idea of how our shoulder is able to move, and it'll feel safer being compromised in all these other positions. So it'll help you be stronger, it'll help you be more resistant to injury, and it'll just generally help you feel better. So typically for this type of mobility work and loaded mobility work, I'll recommend anywhere from 3 to 10 reps. I want to make sure you do enough reps so you actually get some activation in the brain and you're actually getting some movement in the joint, but not too many or so many that you start to lose focus and you start to get unintentional about the movement. So kind of pick your range there so that you're still doing focused movement while doing enough reps to get load in and get enough work done there as well. So if you want to use this throughout the week too, just how you set it up with your programming, you can do it as a warm-up, you can do it as rehab work, you can use it as strength work if you want to load it really heavy and hard too. So just depending on how you want to use it, you can do it as much as you want throughout the week or even just every once in a while. It's totally up to you with your application. So hopefully that was really helpful, guys. being able to see all the different ways that you can actually train your shoulders that are different than what you're used to. It's a great way to do rehab. It's a great way to prevent injury in the future and just generally get stronger. So if you found this all helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you next time.